Hey, are you hungry? Well, you're in luck. Meat and Three is back for season 16. I'm Taylor Early, and we've got a whole new batch of reporters I am so excited to introduce you to.
Hi, there. I'm Elizabeth Fisher.
Asha McElroy.
Sam Girardi.
Jessica Gingrich.
Hannah from Wisconsin.
I'm a swing dancing audio engineer.
I am a future registered dietitian nutritionist.
I'm from New York, and I love rice and beans.
My favorite food of all time is a shrimp burrito.
I love watermelon.
We've also got a bonus podcast for you called Behind the Internship. 3 of our reporters will take you along to show how they developed stories for this very show, Meat and Three.
Hi, I'm Danielle Flitter, a plant-based chef from Philadelphia, living in Mexico City.
I'm Sophia Hooper. I'm a bartender based in Portland, Maine.
My name is Addison Austin Liu. I am a chef and food journalist from Salt Lake City, Utah, and my favorite food is Peruvian.
Rice and beans.
Hand-drawn noodle soup.
So tune in to enjoy a square meal for your ears. And I hope you saved a little room for dessert.
This episode is brought to you by you. Go to heritageradionetwork.org/donate to become a member today.
Welcome to The Line. I'm your host, Eli Sussman. Thanks for joining us for another episode here on Heritage Radio Network. My guest today is Santiago Perez. He was born in Mexico City and went to school there, moving first to London, then to New York City to be an investment banker. He had gone to school and received a chemical engineering degree, and then somewhere along the way decided that investment banking was the right fit. At the age of 29, he was working at UBS in New York City, and along with his childhood friend Santiago Gomez, they decided they wanted to open up a restaurant. What would follow is critical acclaim, a spot on the world's 50 best list, an additional restaurant in New York City, and 3 more projects lined up to open in 2020. But leading up to opening Cosme, my guest today was just another investment banker in New York with a dream of being a restaurateur. And many have tried before and failed. And just having money or access to those with money doesn't always guarantee you can open and run a restaurant. Lots of people with solid analytical skills, many with great understandings of international market fluctuations, cannot seem to crack the restaurant success code. But today's guest was different. Cosme has now been open for 5 years and has only increased in popularity as time goes on. It has also increased the fame and influence of the chefs, Enrique Olvera, and catapulted chef Daniel Soto Innes to chef stardom. In 2017, they opened another restaurant together with both chefs now partners with Santiago. And as I mentioned, they will open 3 West Coast restaurants in 2020. Today, we'll talk about why being an investment banker is the right or wrong background for opening a restaurant, how Santiago connected with his massively talented creative chef team, and also how to maintain consistency and structure while expanding to have bi-coastal operations. Santiago, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Eli. I'm excited to be here.
So you were born in Mexico City. Did you always have intentions to come to the United States? I know you moved to London first for your investment banking job. So when you were growing up, did you think that the U.S. was in the cards for you?
Well, I've always had the travel bug. I didn't know exactly what my plans were until later on in college. But I did know I wanted to sort of push some boundaries and create something new. I was, as you said, born and raised in Mexico City. Always been super passionate about food, mostly by eating it, not really I never thought I was going to sort of pivot into the restaurant business. But after my college degree, I started working for UBS, a Swiss bank, with a short stint in London and then relocated to New York. And it was there where kind of after a couple of years, and I learned quite a few things there, but it was time to do something else, to go on my own.
When you were younger and you're growing up in Mexico City, you said that you always had the travel bug, you loved food, but what was eating and traveling like for you as a kid? Did you visit a lot of different countries with your family? Did you do most of your eating in Mexico? What was that like?
I'd say both. I was fortunate enough to have parents that really enjoyed visiting other countries, cities, both inside Mexico and abroad. And I was kind of exposed to different cultures, different cuisines. I spent a couple of years in boarding school early on, and then by the time I was sort of making my own decisions and choosing college, etc., it was kind of like the calling to go somewhere else started to become stronger. So that's kind of why I saw a path in investment banking as a way to relocate to another place and kind of try luck somewhere else.
Did anything from your childhood, does it really stick out? Is there a country that you visited or maybe a restaurant in Mexico City that now that you've opened up restaurants, you think to yourself, oh, that was actually quite inspirational, even if maybe at that time it didn't really mean as much to you?
Well, I've always been super passionate about tacos. Tacos is a great way of exploring different places because like the taco is just a canvas, it's a tortilla and you can put whatever you want on top of it. So like kind of like that led me to explore many different places within Mexico and like abroad, specifically in New York. I was kind of astounded by visiting Le Bernardin because like the level of craft and hospitality there was something that didn't exist back then in Mexico. So that was kind of my first foray into like really becoming passionate about food.
It's hard to find someone that doesn't like tacos. But it can also be a very polarizing food in terms of purist versus creativity. Like you said, it is a canvas, so anything can theoretically go in a taco. Are you in a specific camp? Is there some things that are just sacrilegious to put in a taco?
Not really. I think tacos are really versatile, and there's no right way of doing a taco. I think each one can sort of have their own understanding, preference. It's very democratic. So I think you can, like, within the whole taco spectrum, if there's such, like, you can find anything.
I think it's fair to say that at the beginning, if there was one dish that defined Cosme, it was tacos. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so can you talk about that, like sort of the famous dish when Cosme opened a little bit? What was the conceptualization of it? And was there a discussion about having a large format taco dish that would anchor the menu or not?
Well, pretty much everything that we serve in Cosme, you can eat in a tortilla. Tortillas are always on the table. They're like a single origin corn, like very special. It's kind of our anchor. And I think we always knew that there were going to be tacos on the menu. That's obviously like a pillar of Mexican cuisine. But we sort of knew that we needed a staple, something that people would really remember. So back then in the early days, as both Chef Enrique and Chef Daniela were trying to think about what would be appropriate, they sort of pulled a recipe from their grandmothers, like the duck carnitas. It was sort of a really nice way to kind of come home to your roots with the ingredients, processes, but putting a spin on it with the duck.
Do you think Cosme is authentic? Is it a new realization of what authenticity of Mexican cuisine can be, or is it something else entirely? Is it a vision of Enrique and Daniela that maybe their grandmothers would not consider as authentic?
I think consider like establishing Mexican food as authentic. It's a little tricky. Mm-hmm. There is obviously certain elements that have been, our culture and our food for like centuries, no? But I think the biggest challenge was establishing Cosme on its own, having its own personality, being driven by the ingredients that are available in New York, by following certain, processes, etc., but like letting it Cosme express its own personality. And that's, I think, one of the reasons among many Cosme has been successful. It's that it is a great restaurant that happens to be Mexican. It's not really a place that is calling everywhere like, hey, I'm Mexican, It's just like it has its own personality.
When you were growing up, first, what part of Mexico City did you grow up in? And also, were there any restaurants that were open then that still exist now that when you were exploring the idea of opening up Cosme, did you go back home and revisit some street taco place or a high-end place and do a lot of research in that capacity, or were you more focused on New York restaurants? So first, what area, and then if there were inspirations.
No, for sure. I was born and raised in the southern part of Mexico City. I don't think and I speak collectively with like chefs and partners, like we never need to kind of revisit tacos. We eat them almost every day, you know? So it's kind of like we didn't need to do any research on that front. Obviously, in order to launch a successful business anywhere you need to understand the context in which you're going to do it. So there was like a big amount of kind of visiting restaurants in New York, in other parts of the world, you know, like to sort of start crafting the vision we had for Cosme. In terms of a staple restaurant in Mexico City, there is one that's been open for almost 50 years, passed by generation to generation. It's called San Angelin, and it just does everything very good. It has live music. It seems like a festive environment. The food is not the best you've ever eaten, but it's kind of very consistent, and that's sort of an approach we also wanted to follow. We didn't want Cosme to be something that was like super hot and popular and then fade away, just as many New York restaurants do. But like the kind of challenge that we put on ourselves was, how do we build a restaurant that's going to stand 50 years or maybe even longer than its founders, you know?
Can you briefly explain what it means to be an investment banker? You did mergers and acquisitions. I think people really don't understand what it means to work in a bank where you don't physically work in the bank as like a teller. And also some people don't know what mergers and acquisitions is. So if you could give a quick rundown of what that really means.
Well, a bank has many different functions. I worked in the investment banking division, and pretty much you're working with very big clients, giant companies, advising them on a few things. Primarily mergers and acquisitions. It's when someone wants to buy another company or sell their company. And the other big area of it is getting them capital, both in the form of equity or debt. So kind of it was a short but very intense stint there. It's famous for like sort of having very long hours. And at the beginning, my learning curve was super steep, just as many other young kids out there. But as time went on, like it just didn't feel much real, you know. Like you're advising these giant companies, but really your impact is limited to a very specific function. And over time, it got a little bit monotonous, and I wanted a bigger challenge. I could have kept on going there or like pursued a different field in finance, but like it just didn't feel true to me. And I've always been very careful to listen, like kind of my inner voice and how to sort of pivot into new things that you're passionate about and just run with it. So that's pretty much how my early years in banking were.
There is something appealing, though, about being in the banking world, which is that with the income that you generate, you have the ability to go out and eat and explore, right? So you were in New York, you were a young guy, you're really into food. It gave you the opportunity to try restaurants at all price points, but Cosme is at a higher price point. It is a fancier restaurant. You mentioned Le Bernardin earlier. When you were in those first couple years in New York, were there any places that you tried that struck you that still stay with you today, sort of any iconic New York City establishments or even places that you tried that maybe aren't open anymore?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the list goes on and on. As you correctly say, like by working in these finance jobs, you have a decent salary. I don't think it's like the way it was in the 1980s or 90s, but like it has certainly evolved in that way. But it did give me the opportunity and the freedom to go out there and eat and try and like and dislike things. There's a couple of restaurants that I kind of still really kind of cherish that experience. One, as you correctly said, it's Le Bernardin. I try to go like every quarter. Chef Eric changes the menu like often, and like it's very interesting to see how they do things in a very simple way, where the ingredient is the main show. They don't try to elaborate further in it. And another great experience was when I first came to New York. I went to La Esquina, a Mexican restaurant on Kenmare in the middle of Soho, where kind of the food was not the star, but like you went into these like little shack, and then you had to sort of be able to put your name on the door, and you went through like a dodgy security guard, and where if you had done things right, you can just kind of walk into there and walk through the kitchen in a very like not illegal, but like a super cool way, and kind of the experience was something very, very special. So I think the food in Le Bernardin really like showed me how things could be done at a great level of execution, whereas La Esquina is an example of someone that did a concept and a memorable experience that really like sort of stayed in my mind.
When you set out to open Cosme and you thought, I'm doing it, I'm gonna leave my job, or I'm gonna pivot away from my job while still working there, but I'm gonna plan to open up a restaurant, was it Chef Enrique or no one? Did you make a list, and was he on that list? How did he figure in to the Cosme structure from day one?
Yeah, no, I think it was very clear to me that it was a very challenging project. It's no secret that restaurants, and especially New York City, are one of the most difficult endeavors you can go for. So it was very clear from the beginning that it was a collective effort, and that I needed to put the different pieces to make these work. Of course, I had a list on my head, but really, like, I don't think I would have done it with anyone else. From a kind of a business perspective, it was always kind of obvious there was a gap in New York, like fine dining or like quality Mexican food. Even though there's plenty of it, there were not a lot of people doing it at the right level. So early on, as you correctly said, my childhood friend Santiago Gomez and myself, we came up with the idea of going for it, and we both quit our jobs, and like we really thought that there were a lot of elements of Mexico misrepresented in the U.S. And New York is a city famous for, like, if you do things right, people will receive it. So we thought that not only the food, but also the ambience, the design, Mexican hospitality were like kind of key ingredients that we needed to put into this blender. So we, before Chef Enrique, we met with a Mexican architect, dear friend of ours from school, that he was being an architect with Norman Foster here in New York, and we kind of discussed the idea, and he was like totally on board. He understood the concept, and he kind of we became sort of three, and as much as we had other chefs in mind, Enrique was, I mean, definitely on the top, not because he was already more consolidated or famous. I mean, I don't like that word, but than others. But it was like, it seemed like he was no longer playing games. He had been already in business in Mexico for 15 years. He had went that route through awards, doing molecular cuisine, all sorts of different things. And he was just like kind of finding home, like in what he liked, what he really enjoyed cooking and eating. And it was kind of a natural sort of fit. How we came to him, it's a complete different story. We didn't know him. We visited his flagship restaurant, Pujol, a few times, but it was until we read that he had an event where he was cooking in New York. So we went there with the intention of talking to him, but it just didn't happen, So like next week, we flew down to Mexico City, and we really visited Pujol and said, like, hey, we're here to meet Enrique. We have a meeting with him. And they're like, what? It's like kind of disorganized. Like, it's a beautiful chaos down there. So it's like, okay, yeah. Like, so after we waited a couple of hours and we met with him with a like typical kind of investment banker pitch, like everything was planned and projected and all of these things. But we had the first page of it was blank. And we told him, like, this is our vision. It's no shortcuts, doing things for the right reasons, and we need you on board. We're not going to do it otherwise, So it was kind of like, I think that for him, he had opportunities left and right, but I don't think he had one in front of him that felt right. And obviously it took a couple of visits to New York. We didn't have a space. It's kind of challenging to navigate these, especially when you've never done it. But we became really close friends in the process, and we ended up partnering, in a I believe a partnership that really works.
It's a pretty epic sales pitch, considering that you went to someone who is extremely well established, who had a lot of avenues to pursue, and you said, "We're fairly young guys. We've never done this before. Yeah. We want you to come to a different city and do it with us." Convincing him to kind of put himself on the line, because he gave the project instantaneous credibility, right? And so he stamped it, and you could move forward. So you're coming back and forth from Mexico City to New York. You're looking for spaces. I want to talk a little bit about not only looking for the space and finding the right space, but also leading up to it, the fundraising aspect, which when I have restaurateurs on the show, I always find it really interesting to talk about whether it was an internal or an external raise, and also if there were challenges, what were those challenges?
Of course. No, as you correctly say, it's definitely not easy. I'm very proud we took the what I consider the right decision in the fundraising process. As we were in the bank in UBS, we're kind of doing that on a daily basis, for different companies and projects. But like this was in my head no different, like, yes, I was going to put all my savings into it, but like, things are very, like, it was not even close, to what we needed. So like it was kind of obvious in the beginning that we needed to go out and raise money, like it was like a very expensive endeavor, like close to $4 million. So like with really no background. So we started knocking on doors unsuccessfully. Yeah, people like the idea, but the idea is one thing, the execution is another. It's really not easy, Restaurants are known to fail every other day. So we had a lot of luck and good timing. I think we found our partner and architect Alonso de Garay, who not only committed to designing the place, but he wanted a piece of it. So like suddenly we were kind of like 50-50 with him, and it was not on our plans to get an architect as a partner, but like kind of he understood the vision and stood like putting his eggs on the basket, So we kind of respected a lot of that. And when we went to see Enrique, he said like, okay, I'm in, but I want to invest half of the money. So it's like we were kind of sort of, instead of in racing mode, kind of protecting our percentage, So which led to a beautiful partnership where everyone has skin on the game, where we're a third, and like kind of we respect each other a lot, and we each have our own roles. The incentives are more aligned than in the majority of restaurants I have ever seen. So I think with a combination of luck, hard work, and timing, we were able to kind of assemble the project without external funding.
There may be no better partners that you could have than having someone who has business banking background, chef culinary background, and then someone who has a creative design background.
Yeah.
It really is it feels very fortuitous that you were able to assemble that crew, because the biggest problems that come up are really in those three silos. And if it's very difficult for people to cross over from one to the other, because you can be a very creative chef, but you don't really understand millwork. And you can know how to design a space, but you may have no idea how to find the proper accountant and bookkeeper and all those things.
Absolutely. And I think it just incentives, I think it's one of the most important thing in business, because I'm going to give you an example. Like, as we were going through the design of a space, like if Enrique wants to buy these super expensive piece of equipment, by all means do so, but write a check for the third. If Alonso wants to design this crazy thing or put an expensive piece of art on the wall, by all means do so, but write a check of a third, So it kind of removed a lot of the friction, because it's naturally kind of works.
Yeah, everyone has to check everyone else.
Exactly. While respecting each other's competencies, So that created a very good foundation for what we're building.
Before opening, let's just say 2 weeks before opening, if you can teleport back into that headspace, what were your hopes and what were your expectations for Cosme, and were they the same thing at that point in time?
They were. We were lucky enough to meet early on with a restaurateur from New York, Drew Niporent, who founded pretty much Nobu and a couple of other high-profile restaurants. And one of the biggest advice he gave me was like writing a sheet of paper the reason why you're doing something and what you want to achieve. Think very well through, write it down, and stick it on the wall. Don't change it. So we kind of followed that. I think coming from a financial background, I was always trying to look the analytical thinking or aspect of it, but at some point I just let go and went with the flow and trust the process, and we had great partners. And of course the challenge was gigantic in front of us, but as I said, incentives were aligned, and we were very lucky to sort of assemble a great team, starting from Chef Daniela, who she had already a successful career with stints in different restaurants. She staged in Puyol. She knew Enrique well, and Enrique sort of decided that she was going to be her lieutenant in New York. So that was one. Yana, who's the only New Yorker from the group, she's our beverage director. She came on board as a sort of a second person, and Gonzalo, like a very driven, high energy, young kid. He was a kid. So it was like kind of you put under the same roof, like a bunch of people under 30 with, some curiosity and a lot of hard work, but we really didn't know what we were doing, So it kind of it created this magic and an entrepreneurial spirit within the restaurant that was fabulous.
You've spoken about, the partnership, and that seems like it would be a wonderful situation in order to move forward and develop the project. But then what it really comes down to is when you move all the creativity and the beauty and the food out of the way, this is a business, and a business needs to be successful. And the way that you can gauge success of a restaurant is two ways: critical acclaim, well, maybe three ways. Are there people in the seats? And also, do those two things then generate enough revenue that you're making a profit? So it's so expensive to run a restaurant in New York.
Unreal.
It's so unreal. And I think maybe the crowning example is this New York Times article about Jean-Georges that I just read, that it generates $25 million a year in revenue, and it loses money because it's their flagship, right? So my question is, was it the goal from the beginning for Cosme to be financially successful, or was that a secondary goal based off the restaurant being popular and people coming?
Great question. I think in any business, profits are important because it makes the business sustainable. And yes, you're also right. It's like extremely expensive to run a restaurant, but at the same time, you cannot cut corners. I think the biggest mistake people entering into the restaurant business is trying to cut quality, trying to cut corners. Of course, in the beginning, revenues are not as high as you expected. I mean, in Excel, you can conquer Russia, but like the reality is much different. So this is, I think, where Enrique really taught me a lesson in which in the first months we were struggling financially, like whatever we thought we were gonna spend was like over budget, and the operating budget was like through the roof. But he said, like, we need to stay true to these. Like, quality is king, no cut corners. Let's have patience, execute. And he was right. I think that approach has permeated through the company, where profits are not the most important thing, but we're very responsible about how we manage our resources, because we also want a future and we want to keep on building great things we're proud of. And if a business is not financially viable, you cannot grow it, and I think it's very important you can either fall into a virtuous cycle or a negative one. Like, if you spend more on the restaurant and each time someone comes to the restaurant finds a better plate, a better candle, better toilet paper, a nicer uniform, if you pay your staff adequately, like, they're going to be happier. You provide benefits. It's like kind of to get this magic going. It sounds easy, but when you're against the wall with the checks, it's like pretty darn hard, So like, kind of, you just got to be patient and trust about the product you have, and eventually revenues come, like, so I think Cosme has been open for 5 years. The first year, even though we were packed, we didn't make a single dollar. We lost quite a lot of money, but eventually things start to turn around. We've repaid the investment. It's like great. We've already opened a new restaurant, Atla, with in part the kind of the income generated by Cosme, and now we're kind of entering the next stage of the business where we can sort of we have a slightly bigger operation, we have more systems in place, the partnership works, we have access to funding, and we're expanding into the West Coast.
More on that, all of that, in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us here on Heritage Radio Network.
You listen to Heritage Radio Network because, let's face it, you have really good taste. You care about where your food comes from, who made it, and its impact on the planet. Whether you're looking for an inspiring interview with your favorite celebrity chef, the latest on Dave Arnold's Spinzall, or if you want to get down and dirty with some agricultural policy, we've got you covered. 10 years in and 13,000 episodes later, HRN continues to be the go-to media outlet for thoughtful eaters, like you. And we never could have done it without the support of our listeners. Help Food Radio continue in the future and help us raise enough funds for the year to come. Go to heritageradionetwork.org/donate today. And since you've got such good taste, we have some very cool member gifts for you to choose from. Thanks for listening and for being a part of the HRN community.
Welcome back to The Line here on Heritage Radio. I'm your host, Eli Sussman, and today I'm joined by Santiago Perez. He is the founder and co-partner of Cosme, and they also have another restaurant in New York City, Atla, that we were just starting to talk about, and they have some new projects coming up on the West Coast. So let's jump into it right away. Right before we went to break, you had said that Cosme had turned the corner and that using some of that revenue and some of those profits, you were able to open up a second restaurant. The new spot that opened in 2017, it's different visually, it's different in terms of menu, and it just has kind of an overall different vibe. Can you talk about the second project, how it came to be, and what were the determinations that went into doing that style of project?
Yeah, so I think Cosme evolved into becoming a very special restaurant that you don't go every week. You know, it's as you said, it's a fairly high price. It's a lot of people join us to celebrate a few things, and it's right in the middle of the city. Like we have a great mix of tourists, of locals, of business. And the next project, it sort of felt natural to do something more casual, somewhere where we can go every day. We kind of thought about it, about not even what New York needed, but where we'd like to eat every day. So it's Atla means meeting point in Nahuatl. So it's kind of like it's the definition, our definition of a neighborhood restaurant. It's very accessible. Most likely you don't need a reservation. You can just walk in, and it's like the approach to how we do things, it's much more laid back. And as you correctly said, like that has been open for 2 years, very successfully. Like we're super happy with that concept, and we're looking into like other opportunities to put it somewhere else. But like what's really next for us, it's the West Coast. Los Angeles kind of felt also very natural. It's like the second city in the world where most Spanish is spoken. So it's kind of like a hybrid between New York and Mexico City. So it's like kind of where we really thought our feet should land next. We're doing a couple of projects there, and we're very excited.
What I find interesting about the cuisine variations between New York and LA, among the many differences that exist, is that LA has excellent Mexican food across the board. It has for forever. Mm-hmm. I think that, like you said, New York was sort of lacking maybe in certain maybe price points, but also across the board, not as many spots in New York as in Los Angeles. So my first question is going into a sort of a more crowded market in Los Angeles, do you feel that you have competition for your sort of your product, your restaurant in New York, or are you something unique that's going into LA?
Yes, I think it certainly there is a much more deeper Mexican culture ingrained in Los Angeles, and naturally it comes with a bigger variety of Mexican food at all price points. I don't really think of other places when we kind of go to the drawing board and try to come up with new concepts, because I do believe in a city like Mexico City, New York, Los Angeles. It's so big that if you do something authentic and well executed, people will come. Back in the early days, like as I was kind of like writing the business plan for Cosme, started looking at the different sort of Mexican restaurants that were around, what price point, what were they doing well, what they didn't do well, in my opinion, and it sort of became obvious that the sort of competitive landscape was larger than that. It was like we were sort of competing, for the lack of a better word, with other cuisines, with other experiences. So that's, I think, the fact that there is more of Mexican food in Los Angeles, I see it as an advantage.
What is the name of the place in Los Angeles, and where is it going to open, and how did you decide where to open it in the city? Did you bring in a new partner that was familiar with the city, or did you all just go there a lot and explore?
We're doing a restaurant that it's gonna be similar to Cosme in a few ways, especially like a price point and level of execution, but it's its own identity. Cosme is named after a saint, and he was a very responsible saint. He was a doctor. But he had a twin brother that was very rebel, that also became a doctor, and his name was Damien. So we're calling the Los Angeles restaurant Damien, and it intends to be a little bit more playful, more beverage-driven. And I think we didn't really look at any space. We stumbled upon these, a friend of mine introduced us to these vacant kind of garage parking lot warehouse in the middle of the arts district that it's like an up-and-coming neighborhood, so similar to what Bushwick.
So downtown?
Yes,
okay.
Downtown.
Cool.
And when I saw it, I remember calling Enrique and Alonso and telling them, listen, I know Los Angeles, it's not in our immediate plans, but you gotta see these, you know? So they kind of took the trip, went in, and I just remember Enrique sort of walking through the space and nodding like a kind of a Jedi, you know, like let's do this.
I see your vision, and I want to execute it.
Exactly.
It's challenging to run one restaurant in New York. You have two big restaurants in New York that have a lot of seats and do a lot of covers. And now you're expanding to Las Vegas and also to Los Angeles. So with expansion comes amazing opportunity for growth, for internal development to help people rise, but logistically it becomes very confusing. And I think you alluded earlier to a sort of infrastructure and hierarchy and all that back end stuff. So for those of us that are interested in that, what are the new logistical director of operations type people that you've put in place to help create the new skeleton of your operation?
Yeah, no, as you correctly say, growth means opportunities, but it also brings new challenges. I think what we're going through now, it's a kind of a rethinking of how we run things. It's definitely a challenge. Opening a new restaurant, it's always complicated, and doing it in different cities, it's no less. But I think also growth and scale gives you opportunities to build your team. You know, I think we've always been very entrepreneurial in how we do things, and we try to shy away from hiring like a big director of operations or something, because we want each restaurant to have its own identity and personality. We empower a lot of the people that run them, and it's their show. So kind of some of the things we're strengthening our team. We're hiring a few key positions, but ultimately I think we just need to be focused. Our biggest enemy is the lack of focus, and we're really aware of the challenges that are ahead, but we're up for it. You know, it's never been easy, but the reward of both satisfaction and business wise is there. You know, so like it's a risk worth taking.
Are you worried that you might spread yourself too thin with at a certain point in 2020 you're going to have 5 restaurants open?
Correct.
Is that a concern of yours?
No, it's certainly on my mind, but I think all companies evolve, and with it, you need to change the way you do things. I think that what's gonna stay the same is the no shortcuts and attention to detail approach. But I think as we sort of grow, we're also growing our team and empowering other people. You know, like we have great the benefit of or the blessing of having like a family that collaborates with us, and like we're really confident that we can execute things well.
Las Vegas, it used to have a negative connotation. From a culinary standpoint, it is now a mecca. People travel there just to eat now in Las Vegas, which I think people would have thought would be crazy maybe 20 years ago. But there's so much fine dining. There's so much upscale casual. There's a lot of money, obviously, being spent every single day. So I assume that on paper, in Excel, Las Vegas is like a slam dunk. And you're working with the Wynn, and that's a great property. But is there anything about Vegas that worries you, either from, it could be financial, but also just from like a brand perspective? Is there anything that bothers you or worries you about it?
No, not at all. I think we're doing it for the right reasons. As you correctly say, Vegas had a sort of an earned reputation of being a place of gambling, etc. But things have changed so much over the past 20 years. Like revenues in these casino properties are like gambling is less than half of it. You know, like it's become like a totally different light. You know, you can go shopping, you can go eating. It's a lot of things to do, and I think Las Vegas, it's kind of a very special project for us because we would not have done it without that partner. I think we found in Wynn Resorts a company that has a lot of similarities in how they do things. You know, they want to be the best at what they do. They're very passionate. Everyone is involved from their team. That's very gratifying to see. And I think rather than seeing it as something that could damage our brand, I see it the other way around. I think if you do things well for the right reasons, it can just enhance it. And I think like what we're trying to do there, we're not replicating anything. We're creating something and understanding the context within Las Vegas, within the casino, within the corner that we're going to be at. We've spent so much time there. And I think we're going to create something that it's festive, that it sort of allures to the showmanship that Las Vegas is known for, and we're going to have a lot of fun there.
As you're being approached with all these opportunities for expansion, and it sounds like most of these products are staying in the realm of what the original project was in terms of they're going to be sit-down restaurants at a specific price point, and let's just say that they're all upscale, for lack of a better term. There's also, in the last decade or so, been a huge explosion of fast casual in the United States and abroad. I'm curious if that is appealing at all to you and any of your partners. There are so many places in New York that are doing this well, and they don't really go up into your realm.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you want to maybe come down to that fast casual price point. Is that something that you and your partners have thought about and entertained at all as another arm of your business?
Yeah, no, I think about this every day, you know, where we're going to go next. And I think the way I see the restaurants that we're building is like a little family of children, you know, you're having sons, daughters, and I think it's very difficult to properly raise a kid if you don't give him or her the right attention. And there is a limit, you know, you cannot have, I mean, some people do, but like, I don't think we are the type of family that we're going to have 10 different kids, you know, because you do spread thin, you know, there is a limit to things. However, I think a very large opportunity exists within the fast casual world. Tacos, as I mentioned earlier, is like extremely popular, getting more popular every time. It can be a healthy alternative, a low price point, a quick meal. And our first kind of foray into this in the back alley of Damien, our upcoming Los Angeles restaurant, we're gonna have a sort of a back door where we kind of explore these, you know, like we're gonna have a taco served all day the different types. It's going to be kind of our laboratory, and where we kind of really look into how the economics work, because it's like a whole different world, like, and margins are different, but it's like kind of our first little experiment where we will put our feet in the water and see what comes from that. But
will that have a different name, or will it just be called like the back alley at Damien?
For now, let's call it the back alley.
Okay. As you look towards 2020 and opening all these new projects, I'm curious, what does a normal day for you look like right now, and how might that change when the new projects open? Are you planning on just hopping on planes a lot and flying back and forth? Do you plan on going to LA for a certain extended period of time during the opening? How will your life change or not change?
Yeah, so I mean, my days are all different, like I kind of don't like routines. I sort of steered or shied away from like this banking world where everything was structured and I was expected to be in one place at a certain time. I really don't like that. Obviously, with the openings in the West Coast, our attention will be shifted towards there. Like, openings are not easy. We recognize the challenge. I do think there's going to be some serious mileage put on planes, but I mean, ultimately, we're all. That's the advantage also of being not a one-man show. As I said, it's a collective effort. Our team is very large. The Chef Enrique, Daniela, Yana, Nassim, like everyone's like super on board with everything, and like I think like the challenge is there, but we're up for it.
I'll try to get you out of here on this maybe being the last question. You have all these great minds within your organization, but 5 years is a very long time to be embedded in your own restaurant. But in terms of like a restaurant career, you're still pretty fresh to the game, and you're a young guy. I'm wondering, who do you look to for either mentorship or advice that's outside of Enrique and Daniela and the folks that you see every single day to bounce ideas off of? And is that person a banking person, a family member, culinary? Who is that person?
I really learn from like all our partners. I don't think I have like an outside mentor that I rely on advice. It's maybe I should look for one, but like I really like talking also with Alonso, our partner and architect, because he has like a whole different approach, like he's shares the same beliefs, but it's always like super positive and really thinking how to say yes, not how to say no. And I think like the sort of combination of different personalities like have kind of shaped me into my own, and I feel more confident like having these great voices like around me to sort of shape the way I think and ultimately where the company should go.
Okay, one more before we wrap things up. You've had financial success. Cosme is on the 50 best list. That's an incredible accolade. So there have been things that you can look to specifically and say, we're doing well. But as you look to the future, is there something that you, as a group or personally, you have not obtained yet that you talk about a lot, that you say, this is a goal? Is there a new sheet of paper that you've written and attached to your wall that has something specific on it? Or is it not a singularly focused in that way?
I don't think there is a specific idea. I think what I've kind of also learned from Enrique is to do things for the right reasons and have fun along the way. I don't see like necessarily a goal about like reaching certain threshold financially, or it's just like, I think having success is waking up and doing what you really like. And so far we've been like good at these, and I don't think we need to change that formula, so just go along, have a good time, and like enjoy the ride.
Santiago, let everyone know who's listening where they can find the restaurants in New York, the address of Cosme and Atla, and if you've got a website that for the restaurant group for ATM that has sort of all the locations, if you want to shout that out as well.
Yeah, of course. Well, Cosme is in the Flatiron district. It's on 21st Street. Atla, our second restaurant, it's on Lafayette and Great Jones Street. It's open all day. And as we've said, we're going to foray into the arts district in Los Angeles by perhaps February, March, and as well at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. We like to sort of retain the individuality of restaurants, so there's no such thing as like a website or something, but like we like it that way, you know?
Santiago, thanks so much for being here and telling us about your story and, of course, the first 5 years of your businesses. Congratulations on the expansion.
Oh, thank you so much.
2020 seems like it's going to be a big year for you. I hope you stay well rested and that all of your places open on at least the timeline that you hope for. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Eli.
Everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of The Line. You can find this episode and all the other episodes of The Line on heritageradionetwork.org or wherever you find your podcasts. We'll be here next week for a brand new episode at 11 a.m. here on Heritage Radio. The Line is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners just like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.
I want to tell you about a new podcast called Amuse News. Publishing multiple days a week, Amuse News is your source for food news, interviews from around the food world, and more. On the show, we'll be engaging with food storytellers, from chefs to advocates to people working in the field, and many more. Find Amuse News wherever you get your podcasts. Amuse News is a destination for everyone who's looking for a new, insightful look into the world of food.